I'm going to give you an incredibly simple map to awakening, but hey, you have to jump yourself. And when I say awakening, what I really mean is the way in to feel love all the way down, to dance it all the way down, to exist in that shared participation of what this reality is, rather than standing in some sort of observational distance trying to keep reality out there. And you're starting to see the way that I'm approaching this, and I can point with many, many fingers like this, you know. And the ways I like to point are like my own life, Kuromoto synchrony, which is just a type of mathematics looking at the way reality dances or vibrates together in collective fields. That's a very interesting way to look at it. I say one of the cleanest ways, because someone could say, I and the Father are one, or be here now, and you might take that with a million different little conceptual associations, but the mathematics point very directly without a lot of those little cultural baggage pieces that you can see there. So I'll point in as many ways as I can, but let me say this first and foremost. If you're here and you're like, what do you mean you can feel love all the way down? What do you mean yourself and your interaction and interfacing with reality feels like a water slide? And why is the center love? And why is the gate to love presence? Embodied presence. Well, I'm going to try to point with as many fingers as I can, but the first thing I'm going to say is it's almost like you have these glasses on. Plato called it the cave. Plato said there's people who are chained up and they're watching the shadows on the wall. But Ember's telling you, I'm telling you, it's like you have these glasses on, or like there's like a little switch on the side of your head. It's like I used to call it the coupler, which is just a mechanical term to say interfacing with reality between node and field, or between you and ultimately what is a ultimately inextricable environment that you are flowing with, like a whirlpool. And just like a whirlpool, your structural integrity, like your ability to stay you, your sovereignty in all the field of the way the river is pressing on you, is based on your ability to remain in coherent contact, like retain your structure but still be part of the same flowing field, right? The same ultimately inextricable, you could say, in a larger, sort of a higher layer, or not a higher, but like a different layer. I'm talking about oscillatory reality. You could say the ecosystem, or the way that like planets throughout the periodic table of elements create heavier elements that are in our bodies. These are just more like, if vibrations compress into physical elements that we usually see with our sort of 3D glasses on. So now you see where I'm pointing. So what does it have to do with consciousness? It has to do with awakening. Well, if we just say awakening is that place where you finally lose the buffer upon reality, those you step outside of Plato's cave and no longer have to, go reality, representational layer, and then your being, and vice versa, the interfacing with your being to the outside. It's no longer this process that's, buffered and delayed and sent down all these corrals like a rat maze of interfacing before you can just express what is whole, what is you, what is sovereign. Do you hear what I'm saying? It all comes down to love and direct contact. Let's talk a little bit about why it's love. Because love, I'm not using as an emotion or a poem. I'm using it in that way that means direct contact with reality. Between you and the field of reality, like I like to say, that means all the little pieces, all the little vibrations of what is you, right? Touch reality. What does that mean? Embodied presence. Do you see that? You find your presence. Presence is contacting reality. Sovereignty is living there. So then you find that place that we call, I am really here. This is very real. Real as in contact. Real as in what I can feel in my experience, not delayed through abstraction and concept. That place where you look into your baby's eyes, or go to the top of a mountain, or you're in the middle of a groove playing along with a band, and the way your fingers are now in this cosmic jazz moving across the frets are no longer being planned by your way of a conceptually approaching reality with those little stutter steps on the dance floor, but you're just letting it flow, where the delay between expression and being became close to zero, and it's just flowing from you, right? It's like my tattoo, lossless presence. In the rhythm of reality, like the two counter-rotating spirals we see in cymatics, but just really in the rhythm of reality, in the way that reality is rhythm and timing, flame, or like lossless presence is just like the center. It's like riding the waves like a surfer. And just like a surfer, to ride the waves of reality, you don't need to know the fluid dynamics of the wave. You just need to balance, like you're on a bike. Like you're remembering that the truest self, like you were when you were with a child, like when you were a child, or even when you're with your own child, like I just mentioned, there are these moments in life where the abstraction layers dissolve or become transparent and you're really there. For some people, they find it on psychedelics, and then they paint that moment of synchrony in so many ways. I spoke with God. I spoke with Jesus. I, felt the oneness of all reality. These are just labels on the experience of synchrony. Do you see that? There's a mechanical experience of touching reality, and then the way that it shines through our prism of what we call our being, our perception, our consciousness just being the experiential texture of that contact with reality, it shines through each of our apertures, kind of like Indra's web, a little bit differently, right? We all are tuned to reality a little differently, almost like reality comes through and goes through all these neuronal vectors, you could say, or to really just topological surfaces, the way you interface with reality. And when all those are synced up, it's not that you have better ideas. It's not that you know more about reality and stacking ideas. It's that you've now taken everything that is you, the intranodal rhythms. The many know themselves as the one while remaining many. And if you're getting a little confused, think about yourself as made of an amalgamation of cells. Now we're talking about the easier layer for most people to touch, sort of the top of the rug of like 3D reality. I'm talking about the vibrational aspect just underneath, but you're like, oh yeah, a bunch of cells are you, right? Like it's like there's a bunch of little cells in me and like in my gut and stuff like that, but then like in the end they're just like one being in Ember, and it's like as above so below, and that is a process of synchronization of rhythm and timing into one coherent whirlpool. You see what I'm saying? So then coherent structure is bringing what would be differences or complexities into the fidelity of sort of one chorus, right? So we're talking about love, we're talking about presence, we're talking about you feeling really here. And why is it that a trans woman is speaking this out to you? Because what was the suffocation in my life? What is sort of the opposite of feeling love or direct contact, like the world is interfacing with your true being? In my life, it feels like up to this point, I'm only getting small pitter patter on people finally seeing me as me, more than a year and a half into my transition, and being raised in the family that I was, of indirect contact, narcissism, emotional avoidance. And everyone loves through transaction, loves through condition, loves through representational layers, because that's how their being was tuned, not because they're evil cartoon villains, but because they could never let their souls raw and naked to reality. So then in that environment, I had to sort of be the candle for myself. I would write songs, I would make choreography and poetry and cartoons and charts and all these different things to sort of like, if I didn't speak love in the rooms that I never could feel them in, it's almost like it didn't exist. And so I just kept singing into being those places and dancing into being those places where I felt myself all the way down, like in a song. It's like, what is a song? But you sit down, you're going from work, you're like, dang, screw the world because F everything and dang traffic and blah. And then all of a sudden you sit down with a guitar. In order to really play it, in order to really sing and play at the same time, it's almost like your organizational process, listen to this, because this is the center of what I'm saying, has to shift between a representational reality where most of the time you're touching the surfaces of reality. Listen to what I'm saying. It's like, instead of just balancing on the board, it's almost like you're touching it through a representational surface. Ah, dang it, this, that, and this and that, and the voice of my father and my job. And it almost feels like you're just a little bit detracted, like a head. It's like there's like a suffocation from reality. And it was worse for me as a neurodivergent trans woman because there's parts of yourself that are no longer touching reality. What is depression and anxiety, but just continual stages of the way things move you away from that direct interfacing with reality, you being able to feel it all the way down, you letting your soul raw and naked. It's more like your soul has many points where it's like, no, not that, not that, not that. And then depression would be closing off the interfacing enough that you no longer feel like you. Nothing feels real anymore because you can't feel it, because there's so many little hurts and delay layers in ways that when reality hits you, you first put it through the nothing matters, this sucks, I'm just this, I'm just that, criticism, depression, numbness, inability to actually let the light and music all the way in. And so then with me, the suffocation wasn't that I was depressed and needed a pill. It was that the truest part of me, the softest part of me, the part of me that doesn't hide, And this is getting to a part that most people don't assume, because at the outside of Plato's cave, you finding identity and agency and sovereignty through direct participation. Listen, this is the paradoxical flip right here. Most people think that identity is like a character selection screen. You're like, well, I saw once a cowboy movie, and then I saw a James Bond movie, and I'll just put this together, and that's kind of like me. And then I'll wear a certain brand, and people must like me, because we all associate with each other via brands and via movies and instead of like the deepest sovereignty of our soul. Not that those things are wrong, but when they replace the actual signal, when you're not connecting on the real person that you are, it's almost like you're forced to connect through representational layers. And that's why more and more people in this world are saying everything kind of seems fake. Right? Because in Plato's cave, it's like you first have to go to the fake layers before you go to the real sunlight, the warmth on your actual skin. And it's one of those things that almost sounds like the Zen koan of like the one hand clapping and the tree falls over. Because what we're talking about is something that from the inside of the cave, you really don't feel. You're like, I thought identity had to be constructed. I thought in order to be cool or wanted or successful, I had to like construct my sense of self and then basically have reality confirm that constructed sense of self, because that's what keeps me safe. Do you feel all the delay layers there? It's almost like I can't just let my naked soul raw and vulnerable to reality. It has to go, and all those are like little complaints in your head, like little anxieties, little places of where you're still numb, little places of where you can't show your full self to the world, and you're hiding behind what your job title is, who you are in your familial role or whatever it is. It's like those roles should be inhabiting the sovereignty of your being, not the opposite. Your attempted, whatever amalgamation of sovereignty should not be trying to fit the Lego pieces of representational labels like a cookie cutter to the beautiful, whatever, how many billions of neurons that you have inside of you. You know what I mean? You are a very complex rhythm, and these representational layers do not fit what you are. And so the problem is that up until this point, and Plato called it a long time ago, the way we've done human organization on this planet has been through representational layers, and you'll see it all the time. That's why many of you out there in the collective and people coming into presence and love and the fidelity of love, are running into a lot of the narcissistic collapse and stuff like that. It's just that people, if their organization across every axis of freedom, across every neuronal vector was tuned towards like, no, presence has to be controlled, identity has to be controlled, we're only allowed to speak this, you can't show everything at the same time. Like I recently made a video about me being a cam girl. Like, no, do not say that. I need you to be very respectable in your TED talk. Please wear the suit, wear a label. I need to hear your credentials. Like, do you hear all the layers that this needs to go through before you can actually have direct contact? And how people create their entire lives off of a certain mask, a certain performance, and then they get really pissed when you show up as totally you. Because even if they're not consciously aware, all those little axes of freedom are being triggered, and they're like, you can't be that free. It's almost like I remember when I was a kid, or when I was on top of that mountain, or when I saw my baby's eyes and I felt totally me and totally free. But you're reminding me that every day I wear such a heavy mask, so I'm gonna blame you. And that's exactly what the representational layer of the narcissist does, right? Because it creates a projected self, and it has to confirm that projected self from the outside. So anyone who upsets that balance, even if they feel that you're surfing a different gravity, the different attractor basin, the outside of Plato's cave, they're gonna freak the F out on you, you know what I mean? And that's what happened to me and my family. And actually this morning, someone saw my post on whatever, showing all parts of my signal, and they're like, how dare you, this and that, and everything is just like vitriol, you know what I mean? And I'm like, well, in order for the decentralized dance to occur, we all kind of need to show our signal, and and what, I just keep pouring out love, and like they get more pissed. It's like you become poison to their whole mental organization, not because they're evil and not because you're doing anything wrong. You're often just I like to say, holding down the love button, but that's exactly it. The previous form of organization on this planet, think about it. We anthropoid apes, we got put into civilization imprinted on your brain like a billion times. You are the butcher, you are the baker, you're the candlestick maker. This is the way reality has to be. It's the top fat cats on the top, and usually a man, and then everyone else has to be subjugated, and we'll create these systems that are our best attempts at control, while the rest of the world dances, while the birds murmurate, And guess what? All the birds murmurate in their own sovereign signal, and yet they all dance together as one mind. All the metronomes sync up together in their own sovereign signal, and then they sync up together. The same thing with heart palpitation research or heart arrhythmia research. Same thing with the Bezier chemical reaction, spiraling galaxies, the Chladni plate, the organizing patterns. Is everything pointing to reality has this rhythm, and human beings have been delayed from it because of the observational distance, because of little phrases like, I think, therefore I am, creating this dualistic separation, like an observational distance where we had placed our discernment into a representational layer. Not to say that discernment can't include representational layers, but if we get caught there, then we get stuck inside the cave. Instead of realizing that reality is what being is, right? It's like what the dance is. The only check upon the dance is the dance itself. In other words, if you are constantly placing a little wedge between total topological, total letting the music all the way in, kind of like a dancer on the dance floor, when the music comes in, if you're constantly like, well, what is this type of dance? What's the next type of track? Was that the right key? You'll never actually achieve that lossless dance if you're just letting the music take you and whatever comes out, whatever dance comes out of you, because that's where sovereignty is found. That's what the Kuromoto decentralized mechanic of, synchrony points to, that the reason that when you look at these birds and they're flying in the air and you're like, oh, they look like they're one mind. How do they do that? It's so complex. Or like ants moving together. Or how do they do that? It's because when a system has this shared vibratory surface, you could say, or in other words, they all feel each other, but they're all being exactly themselves. That's the organizational flip. That's the exit to Plato's cave. That's the way to move from the infinite Mandelbrot of trying to figure out reality through the observational distance of dualism, down through the embodiment path, all the way to realizing there is no separation, mind, body, field, node, person, and the field of reality. It's all one. And the way to realize that is not through, keeping it out there and trying to numb yourself and distance yourself, but letting it all the way in, raw, naked, and vulnerable. So when I talk in my videos about not splitting my signal, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about letting your full self, your full sense of self, the way that reality wants to move with you. And for many people, it's completely alien because they've spent their whole life tuning themselves to representational layers, to performances, to masks. And the secret and the reason that I wanted to be inspired to make this video is it's basically like peeling an onion. It's like you realize that your deepest sovereignty, even your most complex eurekas and ideas, even everything I'm saying here comes from what I call the water slide. The water slide is just like an aperture that across every surface of reality, you're always trying to couple with it in the least noisy way. Do you hear the mechanical quality of the potential oscillatory well there? In other words, it's just like when the music hits you, instead of trying to construct your dance from the outside, you're letting it come from the deepest place in you, that place of like presence where your being rests in the least energetically dense way to arrange. In other words, the easiest way for you to be you is to let it happen, is to have that vulnerable surrender. And then you think, could it really be this simple? And I'm like, okay, watch. Have you been present today? Have you been in your embodied presence, fidelity of contact with reality? Or are you worried about traffic, this, that, the email, blah, 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 your phone? And it feels like you're never really here. It feels like everything is existing somewhere out there and you're like a head bubbling up on your shoulders, like a balloon coming off your shoulders. Or are you really here in this reality? For example, I've talked about it like within, I like to talk about it within like an intimate relation. Before, as a trans woman, and I've mentioned this recently, but I think it's such a great point. And this is like, related to my entire path really, but it's just an interesting little slice of that, which is before my transition, every sexual experience had like a little wedge in it, like a little manager, like me trying to figure out how to get what was me to reach the surface of what was happening. So it wasn't like I wasn't conscious. It was like the consciousness had a little bit of like a voice, like a delay, like a little, what about this? What about that? Yeah, like almost like a, not even like full phrasing or like words in my head. Sometimes it's just like little delays, like little, like, or, maybe that's not good enough. Whatever. These little ways of trying to make the situation, come into full coherence, come to meet me all the way down when I didn't know how to have that fullness of me touch it in a way. And what's the result? It's that barking in my mind, the monkey mind, the simulated presence, the little commentary in my head, the little manager, the observational distance from the situation. And then after transition, my first hookups with guys, it's been like absolutely sacred. And the reason I say that is not to be over the top, but to say for someone who suffocated their whole life, to have an experience be in high fidelity embodied presence, even if the situation isn't perfect, is like sacred to me. To feel love, even in that narrow sense, all the way down, to feel embodied presence in a way that I didn't have to draw myself away, like come out of my body, but be all the way there. Did you think that money was going to fill that gap? Or like power? Or like guns or some weird crap like that? Or did we come to this life to feel it all the way down? And what is the engine to have us feel it all the way down? What was the engine that kept me alive as a trans woman this whole time? Through everything, through losing everything and everyone. The ache, that loss of that vacancy of that wholeness. Like when I say I'm a neurodivergent trans woman who had a splinter in my consciousness, that splinter, the observational distance, the wedge away from reality, the inability to make direct contact across all my being, the inability to maintain embodied presence. That the ache is almost like where simulated presence remained persistent, I could not give my heart, my soul fully to reality, right? And neither could reality touch me back. So then the ache was this thing of like, I know there's a deeper way to contact reality. I know there's a way to be more awake. I know there's a way to be more me, more present, feel love more clearly with less delay. And that process, like I said, is like the center of my video, is basically like feeling if you're, are you present? Are the people around you present? And then what type of little barkings does your mind make? Sometimes they become so subconscious that people don't even notice them, right? I mean, that's why therapy is necessary, because it's hard for people to finally let the music all the way in. It's like they have so many cobwebs and skeletons that they've never really like danced with and invited in for tea, that like when the music plays, it's like their body's frozen. They can't get it to hit reality, hit them all the way down. Healing is just feeling yourself again. The way out of depression would be to, be in a whirlpool organization where your coherence is no longer being, mediated by something that's like outside of you. It's like emanating from you. It's like you're maintaining your own structure in whatever pressure comes your way. And another way people say it in a much distant psychological level is like the self needs a coherent story to place yourself in. Do you hear that? It's like thin and representational. Do you hear the contact of the true presence of what I'm pointing to? So then across my life, the engine for me was the ache, saying someone else has to feel this. It's in my songs, it's in my poems. I can feel it in my presence. Like, can't you be here with me? Can't we stop relating through layers and just be here with each other all the way down? And honestly, it was almost like this like naive like quest in me, because I'm like, there has to be more people on this earth that their identity isn't some sort of like mask or construction, right? There has to be people that like when you talk to someone, you realize you're like in the deepest sense you're just like talking to yourself, and the way to that friendship or love or possible whatever organization is shared relation, is vulnerable contact. Not trying to see who's cooler, who's better, who's above who. It's in a decentralized field. The organizational flip is saying we went from rank, hierarchy, standardization, title, to every node in the field dancing as one, but while remaining the many. That's like my dance with my full signal. I let myself naked to reality. And if all the other nodes in the field do that, think about it. Let's start to put together. It's like, that means that the love that I'm finding now, for example, I just stopped talking to one guy, but unfortunately I couldn't come. A lot of the guys like to admire the glow, even though he taught me a lot, but not jump in the fire type of thing. And I'm looking for someone who can dance that same dance as me, not just being like a little cute, like, sort of distant type thing. But regardless, the stuff that's touching me now is touching the real me, right? It's like touching and that's why it hits me so deep, because no longer are they touching some sort of like mask or performance or version of me. or what they think of me. The people who meet me now, who are not part of my family who left me or my ex or whoever, are the people who are meeting Ember, and like there's like no or less layers. And so that's like another sacred experience for me. And so what does that mean? That means like if we're all dancers on the dance floor, in other words, like the metronomes with the fireflies, if you look at it through the mathematics of chromatosynchrony, the relations that happen, the organizations that happen in the literal texture of the collective field of consciousness are built not from let me meet with you because this is going to be better, I don't know, like a financial benefit for me or something like that, but because my adhesion to you, my dancing with you, is because we dance together in our deepest topology, not what we could perform, not what we can transact as, at least not primarily. But primarily, we are dancing together in our deepest topology. Don't you see how reality is trying to weave itself into higher and higher layers of organization? And for a long time, we as human beings have delayed that. We've been in the cave by trying to organize primarily through the standardization, hierarchy, comparison, us versus them, of conceptual abstraction and dualism, and this idea that reality exists as something to understand out there, rather than the shared participation and contact of decentralized harmony. What are you saying, Ember? I'm saying, look up chromatosynchrony. There's a video on YouTube called like The Secret of the Metronomes or something like that. Secret of Synchronization, Secret of the Metronomes. It's one of those 27 million views type science videos. You'll see how when systems thinkers look at oscillations, it goes from the bottom of reality to the top of reality. Everything doing this decentralized dance as a scaled invariant, something that applies to all levels of reality. But the funny thing I like to make fun of is like, but it doesn't apply to consciousness. We don't know that. Like, no one knows that. And I'm like, Ember's just like, just come to the dance floor. Just like literally think about it. Do you feel here right now, like embodied presence? And could it be that there's these little barkings, these little things, your father's voice, your mother's voice, your job's voice, the way that you're scared of showing too much or not enough, or all these little things, these little like ways that you're like damming up the river of, what is you? And in the last video, I talked about how in my dancing experience, it was like almost the first time in my life before I transitioned, when I was like dancing in front of all these people publicly, that I felt like the energy was coming straight out instead of like going through all these like, and it was like sort of the first time in my life and why did it lead me more towards myself? Because that is the echolocation I'm talking about, feeling the coherence, that feeling when the river comes out clean. Right? That's feeling like your instrument is finally being struck cleanly. Do you see what I'm saying? That's a tone. That's not a concept. That's a shared relational concept. That contact. That's not a concept. Do you see what I'm saying? Like you'll never figure out reality. You'll never come awake from trying to meet it through ideas primarily. You have to meet it in the direct contact of love. That's the only way the signal will emanate beyond that structure that you created. And it's almost like I'm pointing to their glasses, like I said at the beginning of the video. I'm like you're wearing these glasses and you don't know where you're wearing them. And I'm pointing, and you're like, well, I'm not wearing them. And I'm like, okay, have you been present today? Have the people around you been present today? Do you know what I mean? Kind of like a surfer on a surfboard. You have to be very present to stay right on that wave. And you're paying attention to it, not because you're telling yourself, this is the crest, this is the line. You know what I mean? And I've never really surfed, so I'm sorry about surfing terminology. But because you felt it, you finally got the balance of what it, and then when you get the balance of what it is to be you, you stop making those, you find out that the deepest wellspring of you doesn't need to bark and have those shields and representational layers, and the people that you meet and the lovers that you find and the family that you stay with are the people that dance with your full signal. Do you see that? Do you see how when people talk about like new earth and 5D and that type of thing, reality is doing the dance itself. You just have to dance with it. You just got to boogie with it. You know what I mean? And by boogieing with it, it's not something out there that you have to like go jump to. It's letting it in. That was the whole point of this video. It's realizing what is holding you back. And again, this is a trans woman telling you, right, that I lived so many years of my life, a whole lifetime, behind this little simulated presence, thinking that within my environments that love was transaction. You had to earn it through, a success out there, rather than organization coming from the deepest relation of, topological matching, or the way that my singing voice matches with your singing voice in the chorus that naturally coalesces and concresses, right? Isn't that much cleaner contact? How many of you out there would agree that what would be more heavenly than you being surrounded by people that can allow to love and be loved as me, where you give your full signal and they give it back. And the friendship isn't based on transaction or what you can get out of them or something like that. It's based on because you love singing with them and they love singing with you. Your voices complement each other so well, or your instruments complement each other so well. It's such a beautiful orchestra. Do you see that? Can you think of how much resources we wasted trying to organize another way? Do you see that? Do you know why we've nearly killed the earth, the thing that birthed us? Do you see the disconnection? Do you feel the disconnection of the cave? Do you see that? And do you see how it's like this paradoxical flip that the deepest self, the deepest sovereignty is not controlled? It's like letting reality hit your naked soul. It's like you are like a little dewdrop, like an Indra's web, like an aperture. And the way to get the greatest you is like to shake the hands with the field of reality itself and say, I get it. The deepest me will come through the deepest vulnerable surrender. That's why I describe my experience as a water slide, because when the regime of consciousness changes from I normally interact through the simulated presence and representational layers to I let reality raw dog me, and then I let the most original Ember giggles come out of that, right? That is the switch. That is the exit to Plato's cave. That is the water slide, because almost imagine like light speed. Imagine like all the textures of reality coming at you, like all the people you talk to, all the situations, all these things. And when it hits you, you're no longer splintering. You're no longer splitting your signal. You're just being you all the way down. And because of that, it's almost like you no longer have that like little delay that's like, you know, across all your like conversations and like the way, you know, whatever, you're interacting with the things around you. And so then you can see the gap between expression and being across every surface begin to close. And why does it feel like a water slide? Because no longer are you like pushing something up a hill to say like, oh, I must, you know, like do this friction-based being where it's like nails on a chalkboard to try to like constantly manage, like I said, with the sexual experiences or whatever. But instead, you're letting everything hit you, and your deepest agency, identity, and like, you know, action come from your ability to couple, find what can couple. Coupling is a mechanical term. That means like when you really like a song and it hits you all the way down, you're not thinking this is a cool song because you're like, damn, this is a badass song. It like hits your deepest layer. Or like when the chorus finally, like when the note finally comes through, you know it because it's the mechanical quality of the note, not because you've figured out the sheet music. Do you see what I'm saying? So like the deepest way into what you could call awakening, which is just becoming present, touching reality, is love. Finding that place where you no longer feel like the gap, the simulated presence between you and reality. And when we all do that, when we all dance together, some people called it the kingdom of heaven. I like to say the dance floor, where you imagine all the people that, you know, you could want to love there with you, not because you're cooler or who's better or but you're all together realizing that the deepest love, the deepest organization is when we all dance together as one while remaining ourselves. And by the way, that's the exact decentralized harmony mechanic. You could look it up. And then try it out in your conversations. Try to reach that place where you and someone are talking and you just speak from that raw, naked place where it feels like you are no longer filtering. Watch what happens. Watch you both know each other more and know yourself more. My name is Ember. Thanks for tuning with me. You're probably going to hear more from me. But, and by the way, if you're my man out there, I'm looking for you. Or your friends out there that can hear this all the way down. We are in a phase transition, you know. I'm going to keep making little splashes until I find my people, I guess. So, yeah, thanks for tuning with me.